Welcome back to Chords and Courts. It's been a very long time coming, but we are back. I'm back with my boy Harrison Chau in the Western United States. I'm also back stateside in Miami, and we're going to jump right back into where we started, talking music and sports, as you and I like to do. I figured this would be a great time to start because the Super Bowl's coming up. We've had the craziest trade deadline in maybe NBA history, and what really sparked my kind of reignited the flame to redo this was watching the Grammys, the kind of set of music that has already come out. You already said that you've listened to your favorite album of the year, and we're barely into February. So why don't we start right there? Let's talk about the January music, and then also let's start that with the Grammys. What are your first takes from the Grammys? Obviously, that is a controversial award show. We saw The Weeknd and Abel come back. It was supposed to be a big surprise. He had his performance. I know you didn't really enjoy that performance compared to some of the others, and you are a day one XO lifer. Talk about your main reactions from the Grammys, but also to how you saw it kind of change from what it used to be. And did they do enough to re-enter the cultural zeitgeist? I know we were trying to stream it. The CBS app wasn't even working. So clearly there were a lot of people trying to stream it, which says to me that this younger generation might be back in on the Grammys. I heard some people that I was working with said that they didn't even watch it because they've gotten so mad and fed up that it just stresses them out. But they saw some things. So like, some of the clips managed to kind of break through that. I know award shows seemed to be dying, but I felt like there was a little bit of a reignited flame. There was a little bit more of an acceptance. And I don't know if that's just because, the culture kind of won. They had a huge night. Kendrick Lamar swept the Song Awards. Beyonce finally got her album of the year. She finally got, what a lot of people thought she deserved a long, long time ago. You saw Chappell Roan take the stage as the best new artist and use her platform to speak out as an advocate. So there was definitely, I saw one tweet that said these Grammys seemed like that Donald Trump lost the election, like Kamala Harris won. That's what it felt like. So I know it's a huge win for if you want to lean towards the left or whatever you want to call it. I don't even think that's necessarily the case. You have no idea who Beyonce really supports, I mean, she did come out and support Kamala. I'm just joking. But you know what I mean? Exactly. But you know what I mean? The music isn't really about politics and stuff, but it still managed to, I think, cause enough headlines to maybe anger that side of the right, which you're doing something right. If Fox News is coming out and finding headlines, that means you did something to enter the cultural zeitgeist. You saw it with Taylor Swift years ago when Fox News is coming out and saying, Taylor Swift is enemy number one. If you're doing enough to land in all these different places that the internet is, the crazy place that it is right now, I think the Grammys are kind of back in a way, and maybe a step in the right direction of musical discourse, musical discussion, back to not being the way it was, but being a little bit more of an accepting place to kind of just talk about music. So what were your main takeaways from the Grammys after that long spiel?
Wow. Well, you know what? I had absolutely a great time watching the Grammys this year. And I think the Grammys finally got back in its groove. Obviously 2024 was one of the greatest years in pop music. And I think with popular music being at the forefront of all genres, that made it really easy for the Grammys to just be able to get along with that well, right? I mean, they had pretty much all of the big artists, the big three, the Powerpuff Girls, with Sabrina, Chappell, and Charlie all performing. And I think when it comes to just popular music, the Grammys are able to kind of fill in that mold and have every single person there shine. Whereas when it comes to different genres, some years you might have like country be at the forefront. Some years it could be alternative or rock music. They never really do too well with truly understanding the pulse of that genre, right? Like, for example, even the prior year before that, obviously Boy Genius was nominated for a rock album. They ended up winning a lot of rock awards. Obviously they're an amazing band. Would I consider them like a classic rock band?
No.
No, they're not.
I don't think they would either.
Exactly, right? So there's obviously a little bit of misalignment there when it comes to the Grammys and specific genres. This year, though, was an easy shoe-in. For example, even the biggest hip-hop song of the year was also an extremely popular song, made its way, on the Billboard charts, ended up garnering a lawsuit from Drake. So, with all of that, it was just kind of an easy shoe-in for the Grammys. And I think as far as winners and stuff goes, for the most part, I would say not like 99% they got it correct. And I think this was a big year for them to also kind of garner in a younger audience, and for them to take that next step to really bring in a whole new community of people that are super invested in it. I think it really needs to take flight when it comes to. I think it
Something
needs to
just
take.
fell behind me, but it's all good.
No, but I think it needs to take flight in terms of like bringing in a new host. And I feel like Trevor Noah this year was not that engaging of a host. I mean, outside of like all the terrible jokes he had, he was just really there to transition it from A to B. But I was watching, for example, like Kai Cenat, super huge. I was watching his stream when he was on the red carpet, super engaging. And I think if the Grammys could just bring in a host that is a little bit outside of the box, but understands like what's going on, what the younger generation is really into, that can make for an extremely fun event, right? Because I mean, where else and when else can you have all of these people under the same roof together, right? I mean, we're talking about Beyonce, Taylor, Jay-Z, Kendrick, Chappell, Sabrina. Producers are there like Mustard, Jack Antonoff, amazing songwriters. And the best new artist category this year was stacked. So we had like so much talent in there. I feel like they could have just blown the roof off of it and truly given us memorable memes and more memorable things. But
So you need them to lean in a little bit more to like the internet culture side of things, like bring in an Amelia de Maldenberg or someone to host it, where you kind of bring that crossover of the old with the new and even more like clippable content, essentially.
yeah, absolutely. And let's be honest, I don't think anybody there is, vibing with Trevor Noah where they've had like fun or this type of conversations. But with Amelia, like you just brought up, these are, that's somebody that these artists have already met, whether they've been on her show or just out and about. And it's just like a level of comfortability. So if she were able to crack jokes and things like that, it would just loosen it up a little bit more. And I will say, like, outside of that, one of the things I really enjoyed this year was it was definitely more music performance focused. I think there was only 9 awards that were announced, which to me, I believe is, how it should be. Have the big 3 main awards and then a couple genres that you think could fill in for the pulse of the year, I'll say. So I think they do that right. I really enjoyed what they did with the best new artist category, being able to have every single new artist, even though some of them aren't new, perform. And I think that was really cool for the way of a general audience, right, to get exposed to them. Because I'll be honest, like for example, when Casey Musgraves won album of the year that year for Golden Hour, I had no idea who Casey Musgraves was.
Yeah.
I wasn't really into the country music scene at all. In fact, I was kind of upset because I remember that year. I forgot who the nominees were, but I think you know her winning, I was so surprised, and it was almost like I took a step back and I needed to tell myself, wait, hold on, let me give this person a little grace. I need to figure out why this album won, and then obviously now that's one of my favorite albums of all time. So the Grammys are a great way for just people that tune into music, have their favorite artists, but want to get a little bit more of a tiny deeper dive on other artists. I think that's a good way. So kudos to the Grammys for
You
being
think it's
able to do
better
that.
than the way people discovered music nowadays, just on TikTok?
I guess, but you had a couple, like music performers that like Benson Boone, obviously huge on TikTok, right? So again, it's like this is the world's stage for all music, and you could really blow the roof off. I mean, Sean, if you and I were producers and writers for the Grammys, we could literally create the greatest show the world has ever seen and get the right participation, So I'm just saying there's still a long ways for it to go in terms of being like the greatest show ever, but there's no reason why the Recording Academy can't just have a meeting, look at each other and say, guys, we can literally create something that is part of the cultural zeitgeist year after year and absolutely have everyone's attention and have people talking about it for, moments forever. I mean, think about what music is, right? Like, we have these moments with music throughout the year. Chaperone, absolutely massive summer. Kendrick, biggest hip hop song of the year, biggest diss song maybe of all time. These moments are still going on. We're still talking about it. So if you have all these people under the same house, create, an environment, a situation where those new memories can be made, and also these situations can be discussed, forever.
No, for sure. Just really quickly before we move into the next subject, favorite performance from the Grammys? You only pick one.
Okay, I honestly, I think I might have to go with Doechii, because
I knew you were gonna say that. Yeah.
I've never seen her perform live before, but she was absolutely killing it. I love when a hip hop artist just absolutely gives it their all,
Or
and
can just perform live at all.
just perform live and run out of oxygen almost, because they're just trying to spit every single bar, Like, the antithesis of that during that evening would be Playboy Cardi just up there yelling ad libs where you couldn't even hear him. And obviously I understand, like, that's not his environment, but I appreciate when, it's your first time for pretty much the entire world to see who you are, and you go up there and you're absolutely killing it. Great dancing, awesome choreography, and she had my attention the whole time. I actually think the person right after Doechii was Teddy Swims, I think.
Yeah.
And I honestly felt kind of bad for him. He has an amazing voice, but whoever was going after Doechii, they kind of did that person dirty, but
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
definitely
rough.
my favorite.
I know it's a little bit biased because I've been following. I'm not going to act like I'm a day one fan. I've only been on this train for a year or so. But Ray, I mean, talk about following Doechii. She had that little buffer in between, which probably helped a lot. But when she hit those high notes, and you could tell everyone was cheering for her, even people who probably had no idea who she was. She's another artist who's huge over in the UK. Probably headlines festivals over there, but comes here and she's at the Mojave Tent at Coachella and some lower on the lineup, but she's somebody that everybody knows. Again, as we've seen, basically any best new artist, how do they make that position? They had a song on trended on TikTok, right? Even though she even put it in one of her songs, she's basically said like how the label wants a TikTok song, and that song ended up on TikTok anyway. So it's inevitable. But Ray is so much more than just the song with I still don't know how to say, but is it 070 Shake? Is that how she pronounces it? 070 Shake?
070 Shake.
070 Shake. Okay, that's what I thought. See, just gotta trust my instincts. But way more than just that song about doing cocaine in the back of a cab and losing your mind. She is a brilliant artist. And one of the things that, like you touched on with a hip hop artist like Doechii, one of the things that I really appreciate, and I think you're kind of the same way going to music festivals and stuff like that, is when you see, this might make me sound like a boomer, but when you see an artist be able to perform, right? Like a lot of kids nowadays don't care about the words, they just care about the beat and stuff. And it's not even so much like the words, but it's being able to take your music and make it sound better live. We've seen people like Playboy Cardi, whatever. Hand up, I haven't been to a Playboy Cardi show. My brother thinks he's the greatest of all time. So I will hold a little bit of judgment and admit I have not been to a show. So I'm trying not to talk bad about the guy. But we've seen a lot of rappers go out there who their songs probably bump in a car, but when they're on the stage, it sucks, right? There's a lack of energy. There's a lack of the production. Some people can't even keep up with their bars, right, when they have to do it live. And she goes above and beyond. Her bars are vocal bars and showing off her octaves and ranges, which is insane. So for me, it was Ray. But speaking of female artists like Ray, like basically who dominated the entire Grammys, like you said, the Powerpuff Girls with Charlie and Chapel and Sabrina, Beyonce and Taylor are the icons of the generation of the past, couple of decades, or not even the past couple of decades, yes, but the past 2 years, they've reemerged as the queens of the industry. Lady Gaga's coming back to fight for that throne, that she belongs there. If we ever get another Rihanna album, that was one of the bad Trevor Noah jokes that was in there. She's right there at the top too. And I'm not gonna lie, that Lady Gaga song slaps. I remember I was like, when that commercial hit, I was like bumping my head. My wife looked at me, and was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Nuts." Anytime Lady Gaga starts mumbling stuff in a chorus,
I was so happy. I was bumping. I couldn't believe it. The visuals, the dancing was amazing. But the one thing that ruined was at the end of the song, the MasterCard jingle
Yeah.
played,
I was like, that was
and
a commercial for MasterCard.
I was like, you just killed, like that just killed the entire vibe, you know? Like,
It
come
shows,
on,
that Lady
capitalism,
Gaga
why?
still has that, but she's so big now that she had to get paid for if she's going to act like that, she's going to get a paycheck for it.
Yeah.
She doesn't do anything for free anymore. So, but in regards to that, another maybe, I don't know if she has the wide ranging appeal we're going to dive into a little bit here, but another female artist that a lot of people love, that she's blowing up, that maybe more on a critical sense is getting a lot of appreciation, that we might see dominate a lot of the awards next year at the Grammys, is FKA Twigs. You told me it was your favorite album of the year already. It's February 5th as we're recording this. I went and listened to it. I'm going to hold my thoughts and let you go first since you loved it so much. Tell me why this is your favorite album of the year.
For me, in the past, 3 years, I would say, 2 years ago, my favorite album was Caroline Polachek's album. Last year, obviously Charlie XCX with Brat, and I've always really enjoyed FKA Twigs' music, but I just have been really falling in love with experimental pop, avant-garde pop, and I appreciate when an artist is able to not sell out essentially in terms of like creating something that everybody is able to enjoy. It takes like a particular individual to kind of ease into these type of genres, but once you're really in there, you are able to really almost get a glimpse into like the genius behind an artistry. So obviously with this album in particular, obviously FKA Twiggy's, I'm gonna call her Twiggy, but Twigs has always been, an incredible vocalist. Absolutely just unreal vocals. I would put her vocals up there with Caroline Polachek, maybe in terms of like some of the best angelic, not full on like Christina Aguilera belters, but I just mean full on angelic siren, like
Yeah, siren's a good word.
And the hairs just stand up on your arms and it pierces through your ears and it goes from your left ear through your right ear, and sonically it just it just sounds so incredible, so good. And I just feel like with this album in particular, I really appreciated her messaging behind this record. Obviously the record title, or the album title, being called Eusexua. And at first I didn't really understand the full context behind that word, but it was just more so of her, creating a word, her creating the meaning behind the word and building an entire universe from that feeling, from that experience that she had while she was spending like time in Europe, clubbing in Prague and whatnot. She just wanted to be able to captivate the vibe, the energy, the passion of what she felt into one word, and from that word build the world out. And so I think she was really able to do that. And sonically, the album's absolutely, in my opinion, like gorgeous. It just sounds so clean. The production on there from Corliss is awesome. And I think she was able to kind of like blend in her Mary Mag album in terms of like the angelic singing, and also some of the chord structure with more of her poppy and catchy lyrics that she had from her last mixtape, Capra Songs. And so, with that being the best of both worlds, just me listening to that, I was just so happy. And yeah, man, when you're listening to music, and for me, like when it's provocative, when it elicits a feeling, when it makes you think about the entire artist process, behind songwriting, production, why did they do this? What was their experience like? I love that. I just don't want to listen to music and then it be on a surface level. I think you and I love deep diving, learning about the artist's livelihood and how they came up in their industry, and also what it took for them to get to that point where they did. And I think this album for me kind of encapsulated her journey. And so, yeah, that's why I would really give it, I can't really see another album coming out this year that is that experimental or that new in terms of what it was trying to provide for me to enjoy enough. And I know it's early on, but this has to be at the forefront for album of the year for me.
All right. First, I want you to guess what do you think was my favorite track off the album?
Perfect Stranger.
That's not the one with Northwest, right?
Okay, Childlike Things.
I'm embarrassed to say that was by far my favorite moment of the track. That was the one single I had listened to before I listened to the album, complete from start to finish. And I didn't want it to be, obviously when you hear a single, in the back of your mind that this is supposed to be the best song, not even sometimes the best song, but like the catchiest song, right? They're going to put that out, whether it's the record label driving it or it could be a completely experimental album. They're going to pick that one little moment that at least might get some radio play or something like that, right? Especially, FK Twigs is an artist who is big, but she's not at that level where she's probably demanding everything on the promotional release of her album. The music industry is what it is at this point right now, that it's still not, it's not full LeBron James player empowerment. Where for me, okay, I knew that was going to be the case, and I had an idea that the rest of the album, I saw the 9.1 on Pitchfork, something insane, where I knew there was going to be some heavily, I don't know if I don't mean to use this word, pejoratively, but there was going to be a heavy artistic tone to this album where I knew it wouldn't be as reflective as that song. So when I listened to it, I could definitely feel where you were coming from. I could feel where it was, like you said, ethereal. She has the siren voice. She's calling you to the depths like Odysseus, which, speaking of that, Christopher Nolan movie next year is going to be amazing, hopefully. But to think of it of that way of like, well, that was the highest moment for me, and that was also what was probably the record label's highest moment for them, and also what they thought was maybe the poppiest, made me feel a little bit like, oh, am I basic? Am I not getting this? What's going on here? So my question for you, I listened to it, full disclosure, at the gym. I had a workout, started from track 1, ended up finishing a little bit before the album. I won't lie, I didn't make the full 45 minutes on my workout. Maybe I'm slacking in that department, but listen to the rest of it right after, all at once. And for me, I don't know if it was the setting or what, but that didn't seem like the place or the time. So as a person who loved this album, can you just answer that one question for me? That was the one thing that was missing for me, is like, when do I listen to this? Because obviously there's songs you hear like, oh, this is perfect, driving down the PCH, with the sun going the top down. There's songs like that that are perfect for that moment. There's songs where, you play the perfect time of a pregame before you were going out in college, or the song that really gets everybody going right before you step out. There are moments for music. And for me, I was listening to this album and I was just wondering when do I listen to this?
Yeah, so I'll give you the perfect example. So my fiance and I, we listened to this album at the same time. We had our headphones on, and it was like between 10:30 to 11 p.m. We were just in our living room. We both had it on, and I would say that's the perfect time to listen to this record. Maybe have a glass of wine or your favorite cocktail in hand. And, whether you're sitting on the couch or you're standing up and moving around, just let the soundscape really envelop you. If that record were the ocean, each track being a wave, that's how I would just approach it. Surrender to the music completely and just really let it fully take over.
That's fair. But do you go back, because you've obviously listened to it multiple times, I assume.
Yeah.
Do you go back and do you listen to the whole thing all the way through every time? Because it doesn't really feel like an album where you can be like, oh, let me put on, track 3, or let me skip to 7. Let me play, this one song over and over again. Because it feels very cohesive, which, I mean, that is a compliment, but.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm definitely, like you said, I have to listen to this front to back. It's really hard for me to just like put on one song, because the whole album is like an experience in its entirety. I think it's better listened to when you're starting from the beginning. It's not necessarily a record where there are certain songs that you could just play and completely catch a vibe right away. So it's something that you kind of need to ease into. But I think if you were to give it another chance in that context, maybe your listening experience could be better. Because I could totally see you being in the gym, like that's just not the right place for the gym, And also you might not have your best headphones there. So obviously, like this record, what I'm saying is kind of asking a lot, right? You have to be in the right setting. You have to have on your best headphones. You also, got to be in the right mindset to experience this. But once you do, I think you are able to experience something that is really powerful and also awesome in terms of like just audio textures, sound production. I mean, I've been
Do
so
you have a
big
favorite
into.
song?
I have two. I will say I think my favorite song on that record is 24 Hour Dog. And every single time I listen to that record, I have to stop what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll be at work and then that song will come on when I'm playing the album front to back. And I literally can't work. Like the song completely just paralyzes me. And I feel like I have, in a good way, and the hair starts standing up. I get goosebumps. And I feel like the way that the sound and audio production is on that particular record is just so amazing. It kind of feels like I'm like a fish like swimming in an aquarium or something. Like it's submerged. It's like the submerged sound. Like the main beat on that song kind of sounds like a submarine radar like thing. So I don't know if that's just like me getting like a underwater perspective of it, but from the lyrics and the storytelling on that, it's just something that is really relatable, and written so beautifully and sung so well too. So I would definitely say that. And then my second favorite record would probably be Striptease. I really like that
That
one
one's good. I like that
a
one.
lot. So yeah, I would say maybe give it another shot. But there's a reason that these type of genres are named what they are, because truthfully, they're not for everybody. And I think for listeners that do really enjoy this type of genre, it's important to not get like too snobby and think to yourself, oh, just because I listen to PC music or I listen to avant-garde pop, I think I'm better than everybody else. That's not the case at all. Like you have to really think about what you're listening to. It's not, there's a reason why these artists, and obviously Charlie's been in the industry for a very long time. She's one of my favorite artists. And I'm so happy for her commercial success with the last record. But even with that last record, it was finally able to like crack the mainstream and people enjoy that record. But there's still a lot of songs from her that if you were to play, people would sonically not enjoy it all if they're not used to it. So I think that's definitely, for listeners that like these type of genres, keep that in mind. Don't pressure your friends to just, follow the trend that you're on, even if you think you're on the most cutting edge of whatever music snobbery that you
The
that you're on.
pitchforkification of music. Right?
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, like there's specific music for everybody, and nowadays I think maybe you can speak on this a little bit more, but I understand TikTok is out. There's a lot of artists, they make like TikTok tracks that are able to gain popularity, and it helps with streaming. And obviously, Bjork in a recent interview said that streaming is really killing artistry when it comes to music, because artists are on like a shorter timeline and creating music. I do agree with that to a sense, but I feel like this past year, even right, popular music was the biggest genre of the year by far. I feel like some of the biggest records, biggest albums of the year, were done really tastefully, and from an execution standpoint and a songwriting standpoint, from a thought perspective from the artist, it was just done really well. And that gives me a lot of hope, because there are artists out there that are taking their craft very seriously. Even if it is like just regular pop music or hip hop, there are artists that really want to make music that is easily digestible for people, but also it still maintains like a high level artistry. So what are your thoughts on that?
On kind of just like the where music stands nowadays with streaming, like if it's actually kind of diluting the music process, the music creation process.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
obviously I
so
think
I
that's
think one of the things that, sorry to cut you off, but one of the things that I think we first noticed when people were, especially like musicians and stuff, were trying to figure out the numbers, right? Because the way that came from, like the way they made money was radio plays, right? Let's get a song on the radio. That's how you make your money. That way you make the money for the pays for the artistry, right? It pays for everything else. And then that pivot kind of changed, with streaming where no one was buying songs anymore. Well, first streaming, of course, went back to iTunes when Napster and everything fell apart and we kind of legalized everything, cleaned it up. The 99 cents per stream, like all that was gone with Spotify, and that revenue stream was gone. So I think the one thing as they were trying to figure out that you saw and you noticed, especially in hip hop, was these extremely bloated albums, right? They immediately lost the curation of an album. Obviously, that had been dissolving for a long time as vinyls went away, as LPs went away, as people started listening, with the 99-cent singles, song by song, instead of, buying a whole album to listen to that one song. You could buy just the song. And I think that was dissolving in a way that was the first thing for me where I maybe pushed against streaming a little bit, as you said, a music snob in some way. Of you saw these hip hop albums, and I fell out of touch a little bit with hip hop because you'd be like 37 songs, right? It seemed like there was no curation, there was no idea to this. It was every song we did, let's just put it on there because it's numbers, right? Somebody goes through the 37, that's 37 streams, just rack up the numbers, inflate it. People did the same thing with podcasts and stuff like that. And people still accuse podcasters of doing the same thing. I think once it moved back to, you saw a big artist come out and the album, wasn't 2 hours long. It was under an hour. Or it was, you saw, especially too with bands and stuff, going back to like, no, an album should be 12 songs or something around that stage. You have these extra, as your girl Taylor loves to do, but you have these extra bonus track additions and things like that. But there's still an album at its core that's, an album, right? It has probably, if you put it on an LP, it's two sides. I think that was one thing for me to push back against Bjork, and I'm sure her and I aren't on the same wavelength. She has a lot more experience than I do, so I'm trying to sound like an expert compared to Bjork, but she's out there for sure. And she's much more of an artist type of artist than a lot of, the people that we're consuming in the mainstream. But I think that is one thing that has come back a little bit, that, like you said, there's a curation, right? Like Charlie didn't have a hit single that people can name by name, right? Like there's 360, there's, a perfect example. I can't even think of the name of the one with Billie Eilish, guess, but that didn't come to mind first, right? You're like, oh, the song with Billie, or the song, with it goes like da da da, and you like sing the rhythm to it. And when you think of Charlie, you think of Brat, right? You think of the album, you think of a whole curation of something there. Beyonce's another example. No one talked about, I mean, you have Texas Hold'em on the radio and stuff, but no one's really like, oh, play Texas Hold'em. It's like Cowboy Carter. That is the thing around that. So I think there was something that came back with that, of the curation of an album, that I would say is bouncing back in a very pleasant way, that I think would go against kind of what Bjork said there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good statement. I would definitely agree with that too. So I definitely can understand what Bjork is trying to say from the perspective of, like, nowadays artists, they don't really make much money out of streaming, right? So most of their revenue is done on tour. The faster they can get on tour, the easier they can make money and like have a livelihood. Which is like, I feel like artists nowadays, I see them touring pretty much all the time,
Yeah, exactly. Or they never stop, right? Like Coldplay, for instance. Like I think like they're figuring out of putting breaks in a tour, and there's no rules, right? Like who says you can't just be on the same tour? Like there's no, where it used to be, I mean, Taylor Swift, I think, is the exception to this, right? People actually called it the Eras Tour. There was something to it there, where most times it's just like, oh no, the Weeknd's coming, and he's coming back and just announced more stadium shows, another album, which we'll get to really quickly here. But no one is really noticing that the tour is named the same thing for his past two outings, right? So there's a little bit of a, like you said, there's a non-stop touring, which you see too, especially with like what Chaperone did and people pulling out of shows and stuff, that there's maybe a little bit of like an exhaustion. I'm sure Bjork was probably mentioning some part of that too as well, right? Where the only way they can make money is the most physically exhausting part of their body, and they have to do it nonstop. There's no sense of break. So yeah, maybe there's something to it there, where the way they're making money still isn't how it should be, which is why a lot of them are maybe complaining, or like what Bjork was saying, probably not much complaining, but pointing out the flaws in the system, much like Chappell Roan did on the Grammy stage. But speaking of great artists, like you said, FK Twigs is one of your favorites. Charlie's one of your favorites. One of your original favorites. I've known you since high school. I even didn't know you that well back then, but I knew you were one of the few who were on the Weeknd before anybody else. You saw him at the Tiny House of Blues at Disney. His new album comes out, Hurry Up Tomorrow, the end of the trilogy, potentially the end of the Weeknd as we know him. I thought it was, listening to it, front to back, gave it the same kind of experience as I did for FK Twigs. I saw Mike Dean's tweets. He actually just shared another one with you saying that a couple weeks later, he listened to it again, and it's the greatest album he's ever produced, which is saying a lot. If you don't know who Mike Dean is, just go look up any production credits on your favorite Kanye West album. That was very, for me, I think the word is cinematic. Reading a description, I don't know if you still are on Spotify or if you're on Apple Music, but the kind of like, it's just essentially basic, like the liner notes for streaming now, how Apple Music kind of types up something for the album. Reading that was really insightful into seeing how Abel came out to try and say, this is kind of like the end, and also just kind of talk about his life like a professional athlete explaining to you why they retired early. I listened to a recent interview Andrew Luck did with Pardon My Take, and it was very enlightening because you think these people have the best job ever. Why would they want to quit early? Why would they quit when they're on top? And there was a lot of that kind of laced into the lyrics that you might miss just listening to, how you usually consume the Weeknd of like, his songs just hit, his songs are bops. Let me just play his music because it sounds good. And, his lyrics are maybe a little bit funny in some way. They're a little bit toxic, but his voice sounds so sweet that it all sounds so good. Where this one was, I think he tried a little bit more lyrically to kind of just pour out what he was feeling. And sonically, I thought it sounded very cinematic, but I think it might have been a little bit too long. Maybe there was, a little bit, as he thought it was more personal, so he probably didn't cut as much stuff because it all had to be out there. It lost me a little bit, kind of like a really good movie, right? That's a little bit too long. It loses you some parts and then kind of brings you back at the end. So maybe not the climax that I would have loved, but I thought it was really, like I said, cinematic from start to finish. It had some really good moments. I didn't listen to it the day it dropped. So I had a little bit of like listening to you saying that it wasn't that good, listening to other people saying that it wasn't that good. So I came in with low expectations and maybe was a little bit more pleasantly surprised. Why did you not feel the same way? Why did this kind of maybe a disappointing and much like a Game of Thrones-esque finish to the end of something you love so cherish, or you love dearly and cherish so much throughout your life, is the Weeknd's discography ending in this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really summarized it very well as essentially to how I felt about the album. I love Peter Jackson as a director. I've seen so many of Peter Jackson's movies, but they're all really long, 3 hours plus. And King Kong, for example, like there's certain sections of King Kong for like 30 minutes where you're just like, this could have easily been cut out. We didn't really need this, but you know what? I'm gonna watch anyways because I'm already along for the ride. And to be fair, like anytime an artist unveils the track list and I see over 15 songs, I start to get kind of nervous because how it's really very, extremely difficult to just be able to have like a consistent flow, a consistent, stream of consciousness that they're trying to convey to the audience without things getting stale. And for this record, personally for me, I thought it started out really good. I mean, the first, I want to say like 12 songs, awesome transitions, some of the best transitions I've ever heard on any record. And I thought the flow was really nice. Originally I didn't really...
Exactly. It flowed. There was a cohesiveness to it.
Yeah. And that's why it was just so cinematic. I mean, to be honest, when Timeless and Sao Paulo came out, I didn't really enjoy those singles.
Same.
Was really disappointed. And then he had another
Desculpa, Anita.
He had another record that he did that came out as a single that was also a promotional shoot for Apple when they unveiled their new iPhone, Dancing in the Flames. That obviously got cut from the record, so because of disappointment from the fans, I think he didn't want to include that. And I was that one. Kind of confused. I didn't really understand the rollout, and I think that kind of was a little bit disappointing. Now, once I put on the headphones and listened to those first songs, that didn't really matter. I was like, all right, we're back in the Weeknd universe. And I really enjoyed the ride from, again, like those first 12 songs. When Sao Paulo came in, it hit completely different. I was like, wait, I actually really like this record now. Like, this is going so hard. Why didn't I feel this way? Originally when I heard it in the single, but when you hear it as a collective with all the other tracks blending together seamlessly, it was good. So, 12 tracks in, I was like, wow, like this is awesome. He's killing it. I'm really enjoying it. I like the Travis feature. I thought that was cool because, Travis is another artist that in terms of like music recently has been really bloated and hasn't really put out anything that is worthwhile or exciting. And so I thought, for him in that song to try something different, and also how the story of the song was, I thought it was pretty cool. And then Future came on and he started singing. I haven't heard Future sing like that in a very long time.
Yeah, that was very old school Future.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, like he's bringing the whole gang back, and it sounded great. And then it gets into, right after Timeless ends, right? The record kind of slows down in terms of its pace. It already started slowing down, when Reflections Laughing was going on during track 8. But after that, it starts slowing down more and more and more. And then I think this was the cardinal sin of the record. It was just there were no songs that brought back that same tempo from earlier on towards the back half of the record. And that kind of took me out of it because, first time listens for records, right? If you're not getting a lot of things that are dynamic, it can all kind of sound the same, especially when it's super long. And so I wasn't really getting anything that was engaging my ears. I mean, besides maybe Niagara Falls and The Abyss with Lana, I thought those were cool, but
I thought Niagara Falls just didn't fit like as a lyric, like melodically. Like him just saying Niagara Falls took me out of it. I was like, oh, okay, I remember he's from Canada, but it just sounded so weird, like
It's so funny you say that because I felt the same exact way. But from the beat though, like from the production, it was a little bit more bouncy, so it woke me up again, But I totally understand that line just really took me out, and yeah, I mean overall, like as an end to the Weeknd's discography, I was really sad because the last song obviously circles back to High for This from his first mixtape with House of Balloons. And it's always sad when like the entire chapter of an artist closes, and obviously finality is something that a lot of artists struggle to achieve because they want to continue, and you have to admire the Weeknd for wanting to close this chapter. I'm sure also being the Weeknd is like really exhausting, considering him saying like this is a character, and sometimes between the person and the artist, the character, it's tough for that person to be able to have a healthy relationship with both. And considering like the subject matter and the content that he was talking about on Hurry Up Tomorrow, like it was a lot of dark subject matter, one song talking about committing suicide and all that, which he's
this one felt a little bit less character and more realistic, which I don't know if it was intentional or kind of the blend of maybe he's even lost himself a little bit, right, in the character of the Weeknd.
Right. And so I will say, like, if I had to, like finalize my feelings on this record, I would say I would give it a solid like B. I will definitely continue to listen to the first 8 tracks, all the way through. But after that, I think picking my favorites will probably be how it turns out. And still for me, I think Dawn FM is my second favorite record because that's like a record where all the way through, right? It was short, concise. It had the theme, it had the story, and it started when it needed to and it ended when it needed to. And for this one,
and had one of the greatest transitions I've ever heard in my life from one song to the next.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, is there someone else out? Is there someone else? Yeah, that transition was absolutely nuts. But I mean, other than that, I'm excited to see where this new chapter takes him. And I'll never forget like texting one of our friends, AJ, who's a huge original Weeknd fan. Him and I both knew the Weeknd like, I don't think people understand. Most people became fans of The Weeknd during Starboy or After Hours, and maybe even Beauty Behind the Madness. But in 2011, when there was R&B and hip hop and pop music, there was nothing that sounded like House of Balloons when it came out, and
Fact.
it completely changed the entire way that I viewed just what a genre could be, what music could be. It gave me so much excitement. And you know what the craziest part is that people don't realize was he was just a voice then. Like, nobody knew what he looked like. Nobody knew if The Weeknd was singular or plural. Is in a band? Who are they? What is going on, right? And I'll never forget, you mentioned like seeing him at the House of Blues, during his trilogy tour. He was just so, like, he was an incredible vocalist, but he was just so shy. Like, just, you could tell he was very timid on stage. He had maybe some anxiety about performing. You could just see it and feel it, but it was still really special because you're hearing this incredible voice. And then throughout the years, like, to see him gain confidence and, just, I mean, he headlined the Super Bowl one year. See his stardom just continue to grow and grow and grow. As a OG XO fan, I just have to say I'm proud. I'm proud of him, and if this is how he chooses to end his musical career as The Weeknd, I think it's a great way to go out. So
Yeah, I think on a previous podcast we called him is he the voice of our generation? And I think at this point he's number one. He's number one on Spotify according to monthly listeners. As that stat, I know some Bad Bunny fans are going to come at me and say that Bad Bunny is the most streamed artist of all time. I don't want any of the smoke. I love Benito.
wait, actually, Bruno Mars right now is number one.
That's insane. He came back. He needs to save all that money for his gambling debts. So he came back. He started, who can I collab with? Lady Gaga, let's bring her back. She's about to be huge. Let me get all the collabs. Sexy Red, that song is out of pocket, but it's catchy. I'm sure he's hitting that genre over there. He's like K-pop. I need some K-pop in my life. I'm from Honolulu, but that's close enough to Korea. Let's bring some K-pop in. That man needs to clear all his gambling debts. But he does it in a way that he's still an amazing artist. I'm not crapping on Bruno Mars. One of the honestly best live performing artists I've ever seen. I saw an interview with him the other day too, where he wanted to claim out and say like, no, I'm writing you hear those drum tracks on, even with someone as amazing on the drums as Anderson .Paak. He laid down drums on Silk Sonic. He plays guitar, he plays everything, and the man can dance too. So that is a great comparison. He's definitely a little bit more multifaceted than The Weeknd is, but I'll give you that one. It's obviously hard. I would say greatest male voice of our generation. I think Absolutely. You could say that, right? With the notes that The Weeknd can hit.
The Weeknd as a feature, and you heard that feature for the first time. It was right when he comes on, immediate goosebumps.
He took that throne from Lil Wayne. Okay. Nothing. I think there should be. I thought of this the other day. I don't know if we should get on it or maybe someone else should.
Power rankings all time.
But there should be a documentary called featuring FEAT. Lil Wayne, and that should just be like a document. That should be the name of the documentary. It should be a documentary encompassing. You can do a Lil Wayne biopic if you want, or you can do it just about early 2000s hip hop and how he combined with the music industry, how he can change the whole game with just those 3 words. When you saw that featuring Lil Wayne, you were listening to songs like Jay Sean. Who's Jay Sean? No one knows who Jay Sean is. You don't remember that name, but you remember that name because of Lil Wayne's verse. His verse on that, I know every word, but his verse on that album, that song is ridiculous. But still, that featuring Lil Wayne, every time. And I think, The Weeknd took that throne from him in that way. Speaking of The Weeknd headlined a Super Bowl halftime performance. Kendrick is going to be headlining this year's performance. We're going to pivot off the music, go into sports, talk about the Super Bowl, talk about the NBA. With the Super Bowl, Harrison, I'm not trying to put your business out there, but you are a gambling man. I'm not saying you're putting out crazy bets out here like we see over in Vegas, but you do check the sportsbook apps. The Super Bowl is one of the best things to bet on in the sports gambling world. Quickly, can you give me a couple props you've been eyeing? What are the things that if I gave you $1,000 to just touch the board, props here or there, where are you putting it? You can go with the silly ones too. Those guys, they've made it offshore. They've made it to the mainstream. You can bet on the best Gatorade color on DraftKings now. So you can go silly. You can go. There's a whole page of Taylor Swift props. You can pull them up for you.
Really? That's insane.
So you can go sports. You can go with the game, or you can go with the silly ones as well.
The first one I want to know is who's singing who's singing the Star Spangled Banner?
Yeah, I gotta look at that for the over under.
Because the over under for 2 minutes for that is always electric. Okay, that's how you want to start off your Super Bowl experience, by sweating the singing of our national.
It's John Baptiste.
All right, knowing that, you're definitely taking the over on John Baptiste.
Because you're gonna fill in some ad libs, play some saxophone or something.
Man, he's gonna do some incredible fills, during the song. Do some. I don't know if he's doing a cappella or he's gonna be on the keys, but he's gonna bring some soulfulness to that. And with soulfulness, you best believe it's gonna be over 2 minutes. So listen, for those
especially in New Orleans.
100%. Wow, that's a great pick. It all makes sense now. Yeah, I'm hammering that. I'm taking it over on John Baptiste.
All right, what else you got? I'm looking. My favorite one is a little bit more on the sportsy side, but
yeah,
Eagles to be winning at halftime and the Chiefs to win the game. I mean, I know Mahomes and Kelsey came out and said that it's bad for the NFL, bad for the league, bad for the players, that the media is actually embracing some of the conspiracies you see on Twitter. That, I mean, if you're from Buffalo, you have all the right to believe that the refs are against you, that this league is scripted. Poor Josh Allen. But if you want to believe that it is all scripted, I think that is the script, right? A Patrick Mahomes comeback. We've seen it in the Super Bowls. You saw it with Brady and the Patriots. No one likes to remember that all those games were won by Adam Vinatieri in the first few. There were a lot of last moment field goals. Obviously, the 28-3 comeback, that was all Brady. All credit to him on that one. But if you want to talk about the scripted, and I'm not saying I believe it, I just think this is how the game will go, because I've seen Chiefs games, especially this season. It's almost the inevitable, right? You see it coming down the time. You saw it with Alabama teams. You see it all the time in sports, right? When you're cheering really hard for an underdog against the mighty evil empire, whether it's Alabama football, Duke basketball, whether it was USC back in the day, the Miami Heat when they were the Heatles, these teams where they're supposed to win, the Warriors, right? Where you saw it, that game one, you're cheering, LeBron's going off, and you just know that they can't make a single mistake. Like, something's going to happen where the evil empire is going to come back and win. You see it all the time now with the Chiefs have become that team. I would argue they're still a little bit likable. I think that's maybe a hot take now. I was all in on Buffalo. Shout out to our group chat, our fantasy football friends, and Chris Gaynor. But I don't think they're as hateable as the Patriots were, just because I like Andy Reid. I think that's what it is. And also, too, I still remember the first Mahomes Super Bowls. They just played such a fun style. I don't think they play that as much anymore now, which is more reason to hate them than anything else they do, is they don't play as fun as they used to. They don't let Mahomes, sling it around like he used to. Maybe he just doesn't have the weapons to do that anymore, or he's being a little bit more protective of the football and smart. He learned maybe a little too much from Aaron Rodgers. But for me, I think that's the more hateable reason. But either way, it doesn't matter. They still win these games. I think at least one more. Saquon is going to, if Philly wins, it's going to be Saquon. It might sound too obvious, but I think it's obvious for a reason, right? Saquon's going to have to carry them. And I think he does early. I think Jalen Hurts plays well, just like he did against the Chiefs last time, but it's not going to be enough. So you can get that 6-1 on DraftKings right now. That's my favorite prop. Eagles to be leading at halftime, get everybody's hopes up. Chiefs come back and win the game.
I like that. You know what? That does sound very similar to the first game that they played each other in terms of the script. And I definitely agree. I think it'll follow a similar trend. What I will say is if it comes to player props, so this is how I think the game is going to go. Obviously Saquon has been an absolute just killer on all rushing overs this entire season and in the postseason. And I don't see any reason to fade Saquon right now. Even in this game, I think he'll continue to have an incredible showing. The Chiefs are decent at stopping the run, but I think within these games, you want the ball in your best player's hands. And the Chiefs do a really good job with their secondary in terms of limiting targets for just the passing game. That coupled with the fact that they like to blitz a lot, I think expect Saquon to have really strong runs I would take the over on his rushing yards. Another prop that I think
Let me find that really fast. Right now, his rushing prop on DraftKings is, let's see, rushing yards. Why is it so dumb? Hold on. All right, keep talking. I'll find it.
Yeah. Another thing that so this prop could apply for a lot of players, but
110 yards is his prop right now, minus 120. That's terrible value.
But you know what? He's still gonna get it. I guarantee you. He's still gonna get over it. He'd probably get around 120 yards. Now, this one, I'm not necessarily gonna give a specific prop. I'm just gonna tell you the script for the Chiefs. They're gonna be passing it a lot. And Mahomes is going to be peppering literally all of his receivers. If you are a receiver and you have two hands on the Chiefs, you're going to catch a pass during this game. That's just how Andy Reid likes to do it. We saw, last game with the Bills, they were just throwing it even on situations where you think they would run. They still did passing plays. And I think that's just, how Mahomes and Reid want to roll the dice, especially when it comes to these huge games. You want to let your best player be able to do what he does best. And, if Mahomes is just peppering all the targets, a couple of things. One, I would take unders on the main receiver targets for the Chiefs. So, for example, I probably fade Worthy and Kelsey. But for players like Noah Gray, I could take an over on the reception. All you need is maybe 2 receptions, maybe even 1 for some players. So expect Mahomes to definitely be throwing the ball a lot in that sense. And then last prop that I would like to take if I were a betting man, which I am, I would definitely take the under on Jalen Hurts throwing yards because kind of coupling it with my Saquon prediction, I just think the game script, the Chiefs are going to make it difficult. He'll be able to get his throws to Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and I could see like the two of them getting anywhere between 50 to 70 yards. But in terms of like an entirety of a game, I think Jalen's going to do a lot of damage with his legs, and I think Philly run game is just going to continue to do pretty well.
That O-line is ridiculous, and if they're going to win the game, that's how they're going to have to do it.
That's their strength, extending the play and just absolutely throttling with Saquon. And also, Gainwell does really good on third downs when they need him. I've seen Gainwell just absolutely get some crazy yardage, like in some 3rd and 11s, 3rd and 13s. Like he's out there and he's getting first downs on those runs. So that's definitely another weapon for them. But in the end, I do really, really like your pick. That 6-1 has great value. And if you're looking for a money line play, don't try to be the smart person, okay? Listen. How many years have people tried to fade the New England Patriots and Tom Brady? There's always some new darling that walks in. There's always somebody incredible, even in Brady's last Super Bowl when he had to play Mahomes. All right, the Chiefs were the champions. Y'all saw what happened during that game. Absolute beatdown. And the thing is the great players will continue to do great things. Right now, the Chiefs are like minus 120. I think that's incredible value for a team of that caliber that's done it multiple times in situations like this. And if you really think that you can have confidence, like I can understand people wanting to fade the Chiefs because they dislike the
It's hopeful. Empire, You're just hoping.
You're just hoping. You wanted something new, but I'm telling you, there's nothing worse than seeing the Chiefs and the evil empire continue and you losing your money. So
exactly.
Balance the thing out. Balance it out. Okay.
If you want to have fun, just bet the Chiefs.
Listen, the evil empire will win, but you know what? You're going to win too. All right. That's just what I'm saying. So I would definitely consider that. And just
completely agree.
I really like that too, Sean. That was a good one.
All right. Name a Taylor Swift song.
My Tears Ricochet.
My Tears Ricochet. Let's see. That might be too deep of a cut for DraftKings. Yeah, they don't have a prop for that one, but they have props for a bunch of other ones. Name another song. Be a little bit less Swifty.
Yeah, Bad Blood's probably the most favored.
Bad Blood. Let's see. The Bad Blood prop on DraftKings for the Super Bowl. Oh, they don't have one for that either, but they do have one for Anti-Hero, which is kind of the same theme. Can you guess who the Anti-Hero is?
Okay. Travis Kelce.
No, he would be the hero of the story.
Oh, you're right.
He's on the You Belong With Me prop. Travis Kelce to score the first and second touchdown, 70-1.
70-1.
These are real, by the way, on the biggest sports book in America.
You know what? I would take that. To be honest with you, 70-1. That's pretty good odds.
We just got to score the first 2 touchdowns. That means the Chiefs are going to be up 14-0.
Right,
maybe
right.
I don't know.
Sorry. I thought it was like the first 2 touchdowns from the Chiefs. Yeah, never mind. Anti-hero. Is he on the Eagles?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so what? Jalen Hurts tush push.
Close. Jalen Hurts to throw 3 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. It's only 16-1. I feel like that should be higher. That's 4 touchdowns for Jalen.
That's way too much.
I knew you were trouble. Saquon Barkley to have 250 combined yards.
Yeah, I mean, that's not happening.
This one's creative. 1989, Kareem Hunt to have 19 rushing attempts and 89 yards. Or more, of course.
Wait, hold on. I actually... So, listen, I don't know if you feel the same way, Sean, but I think, even though Isaiah Pacheco has been healthy, Chiefs haven't really been using Pacheco much. They're running Kareem Hunt into the ground, and Kareem's been very effective. I think that's a prop that could have some value.
I could see it. The last one I'll just mention here, Love Story. Can you guess what the Love Story prop is?
Mahomes and Kelsey combined for 3 touchdowns.
Nailed it. Except it's combined for all of the Chiefs touchdowns. 25-1.
25-1.
That's so low. I don't know where they got that number from.
Wow. All right.
I think if you bet that, you're betting that the Chiefs will lose the game.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way where if those 2 combine for all of the touchdowns, that's probably going to be a bad day for Kansas City. You don't want to see that if you're a Swiftie.
You do not.
It's not going to be a love story. It's going to be a tragic love story. All right, we'll finish up now with the craziest trade deadline. Something might have happened in this last hour. I haven't been on Twitter. Everything's been going left and right. Big names are falling. Some of the trades, maybe the most insane trade we have ever seen. I somehow was awake looking at Twitter, saw Sean's tweet, texted you immediately. You thought it was fake. I thought it was fake. The Luka Doncic trade that is, like we talked about earlier with the Grammys of things, expanding past their usual audience into other people's algorithms. My wife is from Brazil. Her TikTok is 90% in Portuguese. She was asking me, who is Luka Doncic? She was listening to a video today. I was listening to a female in Brazil explaining in Portuguese the trade. All I heard was like Anthony Davis and then, Portuguese around it saying, I was like, oh, let's see. How did this get onto your For You page? So obviously that's the headliner. But if I told you right now, the main 5, you got Levine for De'Aaron Fox from the Spurs and the Kings. You got just now Jimmy Butler to the Warriors for essentially Andrew Wiggins to the Heat. A bunch of other moving pieces around it, but that's the main trade there. You have the headliner, Doncic to the Lakers, Davis to the Mavs. And then I'm missing one, right? Kuzma to the Bucks and Middleton to the Wizards. Of those, that's 10 teams. How many of them, over under 3.5, actually got better this season?
You have to take the under. You have to
under 3.5. So what are you second 3, 2? What are the teams? Because that's a low number. So just count them off to me. Which are the ones that actually got better?
Oh, I think the Mavs definitely got better. I mean, because just from
better or they're still good?
I think. So what are we saying? Like, is their win-loss going to be better? I mean,
are they better right now? Do they have a better chance to, I won't say win the title, but to advance further in the playoffs, like you said, to finish with a better record this season, the rest of this season after the trade they made? I'm not talking about the future. Obviously, the Lakers win everything. Luka's future, you would think, unless you believe Nico Harrison, is better than everyone else's. But this season,
I would say for this season, yes, just because Luka wasn't playing at all. I think he's missed the majority of the season. So just already having like another free player come in and be ready to go and fit in seamlessly with the team, I mean, Max Christie is also a good pickup too. Nice 3 wing. I think that's a nice pickup. I know some people, I mean, obviously you can't put a price on Luka Doncic in terms of first-round draft picks, and a lot of people, myself even, think that getting one first-round draft pick is crazy. But people are forgetting about Max Christie, and I think in some ways he's also a first-round draft pick in terms of his talent. So that's a solid pickup. As far as other teams, I mean, look, the Lakers, we don't know what it's going to be like with their interior defense. However, I will say that they've been playing really well. Austin Reeves has been balling, and I think he's going to benefit a lot being able to play off the ball now. LeBron is also, for the first time in his career, is just going to be able to take a backseat I know we've been talking about this for LeBron's whole career. Like, oh, when is he going to be able to have a sidekick where he can just chill and, not have to exert? Sometimes I'm watching the box score at the end of the game, Sean. This man's still playing like 42 minutes a game.
Yep. He was still in the game against I know it's MSG. I know he balls out there, but they had the game wrapped. Thibodeau gave up. He put in his bed. LeBron was still out there.
Right. And so it's like, I don't understand what is going on. There's no reason to exhaust this man. He's 40 years old. Luka's going to come in. He's going to do his thing. And I think it's going to be good. But Luka does really well when there's a rim runner, lob threat. And I don't know if Jackson Hayes is the same type of lob threat as Lively and Gafford. They definitely need to do something in the buyout market or maybe make another trade. But I do think that they'll continue to hold a positive record just because the talent is there between those two players. And if they can keep scoring a lot of points on their team, I think they'll be fine. JJ will figure out a way to make it all work. But every other team, I think,
so just the Lakers and Mavs. You think no one else belongs in that category?
I think it's a win-win situation for the two of them this season. I mean, obviously, I don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs, but definitely for the rest of the season, the two teams will continue to do well.
So the other 8 didn't help their chances this year. You think it's much to do about nothing?
Listen,
much ado about
Warriors. Okay, I don't know what the Warriors are thinking. You have 3 serviceable bodies, one of which is a starter or at least your 6th man on the team, and you're trading him away and getting a player who is on the wrong side of 35, also is extremely problematic when things don't go his way, and is extremely combustible with Draymond, and lastly, is not necessarily the right fit with the team. I mean, he's not the best shooter. He's shooting like, I think definitely not in the high, 30s. I don't.
Some people thought he was tanking his numbers completely everywhere, not giving the effort. So
I just don't really understand how it's going to work, and I think them paying him another $120 million is crazy, but that's another story. So I think this is more of a desperation move, and again, it's the seamless transition. Can he go into the Warriors' offense and defense, and immediately things will gel with the team? That I don't really believe so. It takes time for these things. That's why you got to have a full training camp. Even Kyrie, when he joined the Mavs, immediately, right? It took a while for that different type of dynamic to do well. When they first, had time to play with each other after that trade deadline, Mavs didn't really even do well. They didn't even make the playoffs. So I could see the Warriors, not doing so well. The Kuzma trade, it's a little bit perplexing because Kuzma, I think, is like a name brand player. He played really well last season, but I feel like this season, given his team, I'm a little bit surprised that he has just been still so ineffective, around 16 points a game. And that's a really big step back from his production last year when he was looking great. I just figured with the team being even worse this year that he would be able to just put up incredible numbers. And also,
it's hard to do that when Jordan Poole's got the ball, bro.
And that's true. That's true. But I don't know if his type of basketball, I think he needs to, it's going to be tough because he's had 3 years of playing on a team where they didn't play winning basketball. And so
you hope he didn't forget everything he learned in the bubble.
Yeah, I don't want him going on the Bucks. I mean, Doc and Darvin Ham, they're going to ream him out if he starts taking up crazy shots. I know you watch some Wizards highlights. These players, him and Jordan Poole sometimes are pulling up from the sea, all right, in the DC. So we'll see what happens, but I don't.
Poor Chris Middleton.
I think this will just keep the Bucks where they are, to be honest. And as far as Chris Middleton, I mean, you got to feel bad for him too because he's essentially sent to purgatory now.
I think the one you didn't mention though is the Spurs. I think they had the one problem of they didn't have a ball handler. They didn't have a guy who can throw an entry pass. Except when old man Chris Paul came off the bench, he obviously, I think I just saw it before we came on here. He's going to start now alongside De'Aaron Fox, so he's not the primary ball handler. He doesn't have to be the point guard. But now you have somebody who, have Sohan, the failed experiment at point guard last year. Obviously, things are looking a lot better this season. Things are on the up. Everybody, Stephon Castle's the new darling of the NBA. Might be, if you redraft the NBA draft right now, he's probably the number 1 pick according to NBA Twitter. I'm really excited to see, though, because Wemby's already broken the game. You see him pulling up, like you saw from, like you say, the C in the logo for Kyle Kuzma is a terrible shot. You see Wemby do it, and somehow, even if he banks it in, it still looks smooth from the 7-footer. So I think that's a really scary proposition for everyone with De'Aaron Fox, leading the way with his blazing speed. He doesn't have to be the number one guy. I think that helps him out a lot as well. If he can become even just, I think, 70% of what he was that All-Star season where he led the Kings to the number 2 seed, that's a really scary team. I know the West is loaded right now. Maybe they don't make it out of the play-in purgatory that they're in right now. I think right now they're like 11th. They probably might not even make the play-in tournament. But I think that is a combination that is extremely exciting to see. And I think that is the one time where you can see, besides obviously the headliners of the Lakers and the Kings, you can see one team that I think might take a huge leap going into the latter half of the season, and especially if they get into that playoff run.
Right. I do have high hopes for that trade too. I think what it really comes down to is, can De'Aaron Fox find a shot from the 3-point line? I think if this team, and they got a lot of great young pieces, between Vassell and Castle, I can't believe they were able to keep both of them. And also, it was just straight highway robbery what they were able to do just to be able to get De'Aaron Fox on their team, still maintain all their draft capital. It's just incredible from RC Buford. But anyways, De'Aaron Fox is a great player, but I've watched a lot of Kings games, and I go on the Kings subreddit, because they're a very passionate fan base, and I can understand
Like the
frustration. I can understand the frustration with De'Aaron Fox because he is a lot of times volume scorer, and he struggles with his 3-point jump shot. Now, this is also another thing I've noticed with the Spurs. It's very, very frustrating. You have an absolute anomaly, a freakazoid, a once-in-a-generational player, and I find it sometimes frustrating when I'm watching Spurs games, and they still have a hard time getting the ball to Wemby. Just give him the ball, okay? I was watching early 2000s Shaquille O'Neal highlights on the Lakers. You know what they did every single time they ran the ball down the court? They got
touching the post,
or they gave Shaq a touch. The double team would come, and he dishes it out. Now, Wemby is not a physically dominant force like Shaq was, but has extremely high dexterity, has a nice handle, and can pass really well. And I think, given all of that, if we're in a playoff situation and it's De'Aaron Fox and Wemby pick and rolls, you're letting De'Aaron Fox take that shot. You're doubling Wemby on every possession, on every lob, on every situation where he can get the ball on the pick and roll. You want De'Aaron to shoot. If De'Aaron can shoot and make those shots, if he figures it out and he goes back to the way that his form was during that All-Star game, like you said, Sean, they're going to be an absolute problem, and the young players are going to continue to get better. They're going to continue to be able to draft well. Popovich is going to come back. That's also going to give the team more morale. And I think, man, at this point, like, he has to be excited to want to continue an extension and keep coaching, because it is very exciting, but it all hinges. Can De'Aaron Fox find his shot? If they do that, this team will literally, I'm telling you, sky's the limit.
I agree with that. And then, of course, our beloved Orlando Magic. We don't need to talk about them. Nothing's happened to them the month. Let's just remember the first half of the month, first half of the season. Everything else is getting better. You're shaking your head over there. I won't even make you talk about it. We'll just wrap it up there. I really appreciate, unless you have some thoughts, do you need to let something off your chest really fast?
I just know that we're going to do one trade, and it's going to be for cash considerations. I can't wait for us to see that. But other than that, it was really nice time to get back on this podcast, talk to you about all things sports and music, and I'm looking forward to us doing it more often. It's a great time. I think between the Grammys, the Super Bowl, and the NBA trade deadline, my phone has been blowing up constantly. So
exactly. So we are back for the moment. We're going to try and do this once a week. Hopefully get some Twitter clips out there, or not Twitter clips. Obviously, Twitter's dying. We don't need Twitter clips. We don't want those. We don't need those type of fans following us. But we'll get some, a YouTube page going, a TikTok page going. Get the clips out there. Share it, bootleg it, as everybody else does. That's the only way podcasts are becoming popular nowadays, is ripping off clips. So We're going to try our best to get this going weekly, get this growing back up again, and we appreciate all of you. If you made it this far, if you've listened this far, you are a true day one, just like Harrison was with the Weeknd back in the day. So we appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Chords Courts Podcast. Signing off. Harrison, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.